Hello, this is William Cooper. Welcome to Awakening Together, Relaxing into Happiness. I trust your day is going well. Today, let's talk about your radiance, your beautiful radiance. You know that since all there is one, like Jesus said, the Father and I are one. That means no Jesus, just one. Buddha talked about the one in your experience in meditation. When you let everything else go, you know that you can't be those things, and what remains is you, which is the one, because everything else can be let go. So this one, this beautiful one, the same one that radiated beautifully through Jesus and Buddha, and all of the Hindu saints and the Muslim saints and the Taoist saints, all the saints everywhere, every religion and beyond religions, that same radiance is you, and it's flowing through you all the time, because there's only one. You are no different than Jesus. You are no different than Buddha. Yes, they were more open in their incarnation and they were flowing, but you're the same one as they are. The Father and you are one. Just like Jesus said, those that come after me will do even greater things than I do. And he said, I am in the Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. We're all connected. We're all one. So, you are such a beautiful being. Why is it that sometimes you don't feel that way? Why do a lot of us not feel that way at times? Well, we start out with the same radiant light. That is who we are. That's our nature. There's no stopping that. There's nothing we have to do to become that. That is what we are. And as we come down through our incarnation, we use that light. We manifest with that light. If it's free flowing as it rolls down through us and flows through us, it radiates as light out of us, a very powerful aura that does miracles and healing, and it's made of well-being and peace, and we feel it, we bathe in it, joy. However, if we decide to create things with this infinite light, eventually we allocate it in different ways, other than pure radiance and free-flowing energy. For instance, you can look at your aura now. Like, you can look at how you feel right now, and you will notice a variety of things all happening at the same time. Beauty, light, love, and peace. And to the degree that you've decided to use some of your radiance and twist it off into hurt, pain, anger, separation, things like that, you'll notice those things in your body too. That's how you're using your infinite radiance. You're using it in a variety of ways, and you can see all those ways both inside your body and how you've created your world outside of you. That's how you're choosing to spend your radiance. Although it's counterintuitive, you might say, oh my goodness, look, I feel so muffled and shut down and angry and hurt, and I don't forgive people, and I've had all these traumas that I hold on to, and I'm shaking inside, and I have all this PTSD. It's like I'm a kaleidoscope inside, and my light shines through, and it's split up into a million different little troubling pieces. I must hate myself. No, this is the counterintuitive part. Everything you've done because at some level At some point in your life or your existence, you felt that it was the best thing to do. You might have been misinformed, but you thought at the time it was the best thing to do. For instance, let's say somebody that you care about, like let's say your family says that you're a horrible person or that you're stupid, or let's say they just unfortunately they have their issues and they project them on you and they tell you all these bad things about yourself. Well, you want their love. They're your family, right? They're your mother, they're your father. You want to be like them. You want their love. So how do you get their love? From a little kid, it might make sense. I'll agree with them. I'll be just like my parents. They say I'm bad. I'll agree with them. And then they'll love me. So I'll say that I'm bad. I'll say that I'm stupid. We all agree. Everything's fine. They can love me because we all agree. I'm on their side. So after a while, we internalize that. Oh, I'm dumb, or I'm slow, or I'm a bad person, or I'm guilty, or whatever. I'm a big problem, whatever. We do it because we love ourselves. Everything that you have going on inside is happening because you do love yourself, and you might do it in a maladaptive way, but you're loving yourself. This is your expression of love. Now, as you become clearer and clearer, and you become attuned to your infinite self, what at one time seemed to be a good use of your consciousness and your radiance, twisting it off into pain or hurt, things like that, no longer seems to make sense. And therefore the saying, to see is to be free. When you see clearly, you see that what you thought was a cobra in the corner of the room is just a rope when the light hits it. It's just a rope. And so it doesn't make sense to torture yourself any longer believing that it's a cobra. Same with our internal workings. We just see clearly and we let it unfold. So let's say you have two choices. You can stay cut off from yourself, separate from your true self, and you'll live a very dramatic life, a life of hurt, pain, being the underdog. Will you ever triumph? You're like a movie character, and you're living a 3D drama, a 3D movie, and you are alone, you're cut off. It's you against the world, or your group of people, your tribe against the world. Very dramatic, and it can be a fun way to live life, though very painful in the end. Your second choice is to let those stories go, as we've talked about in past podcasts. Relax and let the separation melt out of your system. To see is to be free. The way that I used to escape my thousands of hurts and pains as a child is I would scoot up into my head and I would watch stories that I would create. I would hallucinate daydreams or fantasies, things like this. I would like to watch lots of TV, which is really a fantasy on the TV screen, right? I would get lost in stories. That's what I think most people do. When I decided it was too painful to do that, to be cut off from myself, I slowly stopped doing that. I stopped getting lost in my stories. So the second option, which is to awaken, rather than being lost in the drama of our lives, of the separation of our lives and our stories, is to quit doing that. To just, as one monk friend of mine said, to do nothing is to do too much. It's to do nothing. To just be connected to everything. You'll notice at the source of every hallucination or thought, I'll call them, underneath it is an emotion, a tension, a feeling. You might even say that emotions are encoded in our body as tensions. If you quit going up into your head, into the fantasy and the daydreaming and figuring things out and trying to escape the hurt by coming up with a plan or a way to get through life, a philosophy, if you stop that for a moment and just do nothing, you're just silent, you'll notice you have a combination of well-being inside of you, but probably you've created a lot of hurt. And you'll notice that hurt, and you'll notice that the fundamental desire is to flee back up into your head or get lost in some other external story, internal or external story. But if you don't do that, you'll just feel hurt. And as you feel hurt, awareness is curative. It's like an ice cube in the hot sun. As you put your attention on it and you connect to it, you don't get lost in the story. You don't even care about the story to a large extent. Instead, you just simply feel the energy of this nugget of hurt that's coming up inside of you, and it will slowly, over time, melt. I mean, I hope it melts fast, but mine tend to melt slowly. You see what happens for yourself. And when it melts, it turns into what it originally was, that I encapsulated and turned into an object of hurt. Everything is made of love, well-being, happiness. It's made of my radiance. And by my radiance, I mean the oneness. The oneness that's you. That's me. It's only one. There's only one. So it's all of us. It's made of us, our true nature, and it untwists out of the position of hurt. It relaxes and releases the pent-up, radiant, joyful, loving energy. And that then is added to my once diminished aura. My aura is always there. It's just been turned into a bunch of hurt and pain, as well as bliss and well-being and peace. There's some mixture of all those things happening at the same time. So, if I want to enjoy my aura, the first thing to do is start with where I am. Just sit still. To do anything is to do too much. So just sit still and feel what I feel. And that's my aura. Oh, I'm depressed. That's my aura. I don't want to get rid of it because that's my power. It's just compressed into depression and possibly anxiety or anger or lots of other things. That's all of my aura. It's like a bunch of water, and some of it has been frozen into jagged forms. But if I want to retain all of my moisture, all of my water, I don't get rid of the jagged ice. I don't try to get rid of it. Instead, I just let it melt, and then it forms into one vast ocean of water. Well, that's who you are. You're a vast ocean of well-being. That's who you are. That's who we are. I like Joseph Campbell's quote where he says, "The goal of life is to make your heartbeat match the beat of the universe, to match your nature with nature." I like that. That's when you melt. When you're totally melted, you're like the depth of the ocean, the depth of the Grand Canyon, the beauty of all nature. We've discussed it in the past, but the reason why nature is so radiant and we love to be in the midst of it is because it doesn't think. It's not twisted off into a kaleidoscope of various thoughts and feelings and issues. It just flows. And when we're in the midst of it, we start to resonate, and those parts of us that aren't twisted off feel so good and they come to the forefront. We love nature. Well, that's the goal of our life, to match our heartbeat with the beat of the universe, to match our nature with nature. Feels right, doesn't it? This is who you are. So how do you open to your complete radiance? How do you let it flow? Well, you flow. You connect. Connection is flowing. So you connect to everything. Some of what you're connecting to is yourself as peace and love and well-being and light. In the beginning, perhaps in our world, a lot of what you'll connect to are these objects you've formed inside, which will be hurt, fear, and anger. And it doesn't feel good to connect to them, but it's in the connection that they melt. It's in the connection that they transform. If you get involved in the message they have embedded in them, you get lost in the story. It's like an addiction, and suddenly you get stuck into the story of that pain. So-and-so did this, and that was wrong, and I hate them, and let me work this out in my head, and let me do this and that, and oh, I don't even want to think about it. Maybe I'll repress it some more. It goes on and on. It's a story. As you're involved in that story, though, you refreeze it. You freeze it even more deeply, perhaps. So there's no way out getting lost in the story. If you want to sort things out and you feel compelled to do it on some level, then of course, do what you're led to do. And more deeply, you just watch the pain and don't get involved in it. You're involved in that you can feel it because in the feeling of it, it expends its energy, it rotates around and it releases itself eventually. That's how it melts. An ice cube has to melt. You have to let it, but it's cold and nobody likes to let it. So we jump into our heads. I think I told you the story once. I was in India and this German guru was talking to another German, and that German was saying to him, how come when I ask the same question as William does, you treat me very stiffly and harshly and deeply, and with him you're just nice and no problem, and you treat him much more nicely than you do me? And he said to the other German, he said, well, I treat you that way because you can handle it. You have a very strong nervous system, so I'm pushing you to resolve your issues on a deep level. You've built up strength. Referring to me, he says, he doesn't have a very strong nervous system. He can't take it. So I'm just nice to him. And it was right. It's funny, but it was so true. And he told me, in order to build your nervous system so that you can handle things, stay with your fears, your hurts, your anger. Just watch them. Don't get involved in them. Don't try to escape them by jumping into your head or distracting yourself by doing another activity. Allow them to be present. Connect to them. At first, you will only be able to connect so deeply because that's all the strength that you have. Later, though, as you build strength and capacity, you can stay connected to everything, even pain. And isn't that what life is about? Is just connection. When the personal self relaxes and releases, all those repressions relax and release too. So we're able to be present with everybody, everything now. Sometimes you read people say, you need to be present now. You need to be here now. Well, you are here now. There's no way that you cannot be here now. So that's a non-issue. What the real issue is can you connect to what's here now? Even if you can't connect, can you connect to that? Can you observe yourself not being able to connect? That's a connection. That then melts the next layer, which says, I can't connect. Because that too is attention. That too is a feeling. So often when I'm not connecting, when I want to flee into a distraction or a thought or a fantasy or some sort of activity, I notice that there is a feeling that's propelling me. It's like an addiction to get involved in a thought, to get involved in an activity. That itself is a feeling. So I'm getting better and better on observing that feeling without getting lost in it. And guess what? As I do, it melts. And as it melts, so melts the addiction that was trying to require me to escape into another thought or feeling. As I stay present and I'm connecting rather than escaping to the inside fantasy of these thoughts and feelings, which keeps them frozen in place, then all this kaleidoscope of hurts, pains, distractions, addictions melt. And as they melt, I become more radiant. It's like the ice cubes melting back into the ocean. The ocean becomes more and more vast. In my personal life, let's say my inner flow, my inner ocean, my inner radiance was, let's say, 20%. Let's say I was 80% ice. My ocean wasn't very large, so anybody around me wasn't going to feel much radiance. They were going to feel more ice, more jagged edges. As more and more of that ice has melted through the years, my ocean has gotten larger and larger and larger, more depth, and the ice, the hurt, the pain has gotten less and less and less because it's turned into joy, wellness, and well-being. Immense radiance, beautiful radiance. That's you. That's me. We're one. As we melt into radiance, the personal self, the separation, and therefore the personal self, loosens and it starts to dissolve so that we can flow through it and use it as a tool rather than being lost in the story of me. So we can be in this world, but not of it. We can hold things lightly, enjoy everything, but be attached to nothing or very little. And slowly that turns into being attached to nothing. So we can enjoy the best of all worlds. It's God becoming us, flowing through an ever-opening incarnation, and able to enjoy the beauty of a world that literally is made of love. All objects are consciousness or love that has been frozen into different objects. Dogs, cats, atoms, molecules, it's all love. There only was one substance, or only is one substance, that is the infinite. So everything that exists is made of that. And in separation, which is necessary to form existence or a creation, which is apparently, quote unquote, separate from the infinite, it has to be, or it'll all merge together. There'll be no difference. So to get this painting called creation, we have to have separation. Now, this makes logical sense, of course, but as I've mentioned in other podcasts, at some point you feel it. You can put your hand on a table and it just buzzes with joy. You can see the universe strobing in and out of nothingness and being created 1,000,000 times a second and discreated 1,000,000 times a second. I see these things. I feel these things. And yet, it's a process to fully awaken because I and you have the momentum of our personality and all the stuff that we have put together, including our habits, our thoughts, our actions. These things have a life of their own. And even if you can see clearly and feel the universe as it is, you can also feel your personality as it is evolving. And right now, mine is a mix of both pain and wellness. Fortunately, mostly wellness, but still some pretty hefty nuggets of pain and hurt and so on and so forth. So I'm always surprised, and at this point, believe it or not, and I can hardly believe it, I kind of feel good when life brings something up from deep inside that shows one of these nuggets to me: hurt, fear, anger, stress. The reason why they're not always so easy to let go of, but they will let go of as they expend their energy, but it's because it's like chronic PTSD, and we've talked about this in the past. That locks itself into your system very hard. And chronic PTSD is a lot of little things that have happened for a long time. They build up and it creates PTSD. Well, that's life. Life has been rather traumatic every day, day in, day out, in my life for a long time. And now it's opening, and it turns out everything is fine. And as I relax, it turns out that there is only one. And as it turns out that there's only one, my trust opens and blossoms because I trust myself, and there is only one, so it's only me. And it's not an intellectual thing. You feel it. You are the power of the universe. So all this comes together, and it's a process at the same time. You can be radiantly awake and yet still opening up. Still, some of these ice cubes are melting. Every time one opens and melts, I would say I feel more awake because oneness becomes clearer or deeper, or there's less separation in the system. So therefore you experience oneness in this incarnation, and you experience God as you more and more each and every day. And this is true for all of us because we're all alike. We have our own different twists and turns on our own personal stories, but basically we're all the same. Now, one other thing comes to mind to say. When we have this pain inside, like that German guru said that I had a weak nervous system, and he was right. When you have a weak nervous system, you quickly go into your fantasies. You quickly go into your reactions in order to defend yourself or protect yourself or escape, right? So what are we afraid of in life? What motivates us mostly to get through our day? It's because we don't want to feel fear. We don't want to be with these things. We don't want to feel anger. We don't want to feel abandonment and hurt. We don't want to feel it. So we'll do anything. We'll get a new job. We'll get a new relationship. We'll start a war. Countries will start a war just so they don't have to be afraid. Politicians will have whole movements based on all these horrible people are going to do things to you, and we have to fight them. And they'll get elected because nobody wants to feel their fear. Yes, let's get rid of the outside source, and therefore we'll have no reason to feel fear. We won't have to be afraid anymore. Now, it turns out that we do such extreme things simply because we have weak nervous systems. We're afraid of a little tension in our stomach, so we start a war. We don't want to feel that tension in our stomach. We don't want to feel a tight neck, so we'll rob from our neighbors, or we'll do all these things. That's called separation. We become a separate character in our drama of separation because we're so afraid to feel, to connect. We'll do anything but connect. And yet, when the pain gets to be too much and we finally stop and we connect, take responsibility for our life, and we connect, all of that melts away, and you are the radiance you've been looking for. You are the love you've been looking for. It's not God and you, it's God as you. You can't see God because God is the one doing the seeing. There is no you. There is no me. There's only us as the one. You're a beautiful, radiant being. That is a given. The only thing that we wonder about for all of us is just how long do we want to wait before we let our ice cubes melt? Do we want to start today, or do we want to wait a little bit longer? There was a governor in India, and he said, I don't want to awaken. I don't want any part of it because my life is so good as a governor. I've got riches and power, and I'm enjoying it. I want to be a separate character in a movie, my own movie. And that's valid. There are upsides to being a separate individual, so we can retain it. We wouldn't keep doing it unless at some level, remember, everything we do, we're doing it because we love ourselves on some level. So we wouldn't keep doing it unless we felt it was an act of self-love, even if it's so maladaptive. And every action of separation eventually will end in pain. It eventually will. That's what Buddha found out, right? He found out in the life of separation, as he walked through his kingdom, his father tried to protect him from seeing death and hurt and poverty and trouble. He saw from a separate mind, and that's how everything looked. A diseased mind can only see disease. You can't solve a problem with the mind that created the problem. That's why awakening, finding out who we are, when people used to come to Ramana and they say, Ramana, what about my life? What should I do? How should I act? Should I get this job or that job? Should I do this or that? Ramana would laugh and he said, well, before we talk about your life, let's find out who you are first. Because if you don't know who you are, you're continuing to look through the lens of who you aren't, and you're projecting your so-called life and trying to figure things out through a faulty lens. So everything looks weird and comes out weird. You start wrong, you end wrong. It's like looking through a kaleidoscope and trying to figure out which way is up or what things really look like. You can't do it. Nobody can. So he would say, find out who you are. What does that mean? It means stop and just connect to everything. That's called meditation too, right? Because when we sit down, we have to stop. We can't run off and do something. So that's good training wheels. That's a good beginning. We stop and we watch our feelings. We watch our thoughts. We're aware of our thoughts, but we're not our thoughts. We're aware of our emotions, but we're not our emotions, which is a good thing because when our thoughts and emotions disappear and dissolve, fortunately, we're still here. Otherwise, we'd be clinging on to those thoughts and emotions very tightly. We would refuse to go to therapy when we need it because we would be afraid if we let some thoughts go, we might disappear. So it is fortunate that we're not our thoughts. They're simply our creations. Some of them harm us and some of them help us. And by the way, speaking of therapy, if you get caught in the emotional world and things are really difficult or PTSD or things like that, get a therapist. There are many ways to do it. Some cost more than others, but find a therapist. It's very helpful. It's often overlooked in the East because they're not used to perhaps the Western mind, and I think a lot of them could use some therapy. Their spirituality is infinitely deep. We're just such novices, but we do know about therapy over here, and it does factor into one part of the whole, and it is very helpful only if you need it. But if you do, don't hesitate. Call a therapist. It'll fit into the big picture and it'll speed you along. If you don't need it, then no need. So I'm not pushing therapy. I'm just opening the door to say, use whatever tool helps you. Okay, my friends, awakening together. That's what we're doing. Relaxing, that's when everything melts out of our system. What happens? Into happiness. That's the nature of our being. Awakening together, that's what we're doing. And the result of that is relaxing into happiness. That's the name of this podcast, and that's why. So enjoy your relaxing into happiness, your process. After a while, it actually becomes so enjoyable and so radiant as your life opens and opens and opens, and it will. I look forward to talking with you next time. Take care. Bye. Hello, this is William. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider sharing it with somebody else. Send them a link. Thanks so much.